I hate my VTuber model. I'm what you call a self-made VTuber, which means I drew and rigged every rendition of my model to date. But it also means that every year or so I get really sick of looking at my current VTuber model because I made it, so I hate it. This model is long overdue for an update anyway. It's pretty much cobbled together parts of previous versions of this model that I liked, but it's really outdated and the art was pretty rushed and I just don't like it anymore and I never want to look at it again. I've learned and practiced a lot since then, so it's time to put all that new knowledge to the test. And I did kind of intend to work on this new model over time as I gathered more assets and worked on other things and other videos. But once I start on a project like this, it's like I get possessed and I can't stop until I'm somehow left with a fully completed VTuber model. The urge to craft myself a new skin suit has been pretty consistent every year since like 2021, where I made my very first VTuber model, which was bad, like really, really bad. But I know you want to see her, right? Of course you do. Wow, it's even worse than I thought. I really didn't know what I was doing at all, and I made this one totally raw, completely on my own without looking up any guides or any tutorials. Like I just drew my art, went straight into Live 2D, and thought I could figure it out on my own. There's a reason this model has never seen the light of day. My second model was a little bit better, but still not great. I wasn't sure how to cut a model or how to rig one. Angle X is really, really hard, so maybe I could just fake it with Angle Z. And I really wasn't grasping any of the methods behind the tutorials I was trying to follow. I was just kind of blindly following them. But I ended up streaming with this model for kind of a while, and a lot of people seemed to like it, so I kept modifying it, and adding new toggles, and just improving it over time. If you call this an improvement anyway. But it still wasn't very good. My third model is the one that I've been using, and you might be familiar with it, and it's fine. For some reason, I was really attached to version 2.0's face and head, so I kept it and I redrew everything else. I really hated my model's old outfit, so it was a good excuse to redesign, but now that I've been using it for a little while, I really don't like the art style that I drew it in. It's too simplistic, so everything just looks really flat. And it doesn't have the kind of detail that I want, and the face is, well, I have to sit very, very still. Or it looks very, very stupid. So it's time to redo the entire thing. I started with the general face shape and eyes. I wanted the eyes to be really shiny and look gooey and liquidy, so I added a whole bunch of different layers in them. I also added a layer of stars over top to emulate the stars that I tried to put in my second and third model's eyes, but like better and sparklier. I really wanted my eyes to look gem-like to suit the crystal theme, and I think I achieved that by adding a bunch of rings and some fractal patterns within the eyes. I also really wanted them to look very shiny, so I added a whole lot of different highlight layers and color variations until I reached a point that I was satisfied with. I also made the eyeliner actually exist lower than the eye itself, so that when I close the eye, it doesn't warp and look terrible. It's apparently pretty important to do this to make rigging the eyes closed easier later. As you can see, it's something I didn't do on my old model, which resulted in sort of a weird, harsh edge whenever I close my eyes. Next, I drew the mouth, and after consulting my model's very few charm points, I decided to make the single fang a little bit more obvious. I also wiped off her lipstick because it annoyed me and kind of threw off the vibe I was going for. The hair was probably what took me the longest because I really wanted it to look right. I've never been very good at drawing hair, and this took me a lot of time and a lot of consulting references to make it look full and fluffy. I wanted it to be really detailed, with a lot of different sections that I could bounce individually for more movement, and because rigging hair is probably my favorite part of the whole VTuber making process. Even if it can be a pain to figure out in the physics setting so it doesn't clip all over the place. I also knew I wanted to try and add a lot more detail to the crystals, so I followed a whole bunch of crystal drawing tutorials to make them look extra shiny. Admittedly, I only actually really colored the two big crystals here, and then I just copy-pasted the shading to all the other crystals since they're so small that you're not really gonna notice. Work smarter, not harder. Next came the outfit and the actual body itself. I took elements from the third model that I liked and I made them look good instead of bad, mostly by adding more detail and more layers. A lot of the ways that VTuber models look 3D is just by adding more layers to add to the illusion. So if you find your own model looks a little bit flat, try and split it up into more layers to rig so that each part can move separately and better give the illusion of depth. Since I hate designing outfits, I wanted to future-proof this model so that when I did eventually get someone to design me a better outfit, I have a base model to work with. Which is to say, yes, I do have a version of this model without clothes on, but no, you can't see it. Then it was time for the monumental task of rigging. I knew I wanted to make the eyes really jiggly and liquidy, so first I put a ton of focus into that, and I made sure that when I blink, there is a ton of jiggly movement. I also wanted to add a few fun toggles to the model, but I'll wait until the reveal to show you those. I watched a few different tutorials over the course of about 2 years to reach this point, so it's hard to explain exactly how I rigged this model. I am far from a professional, and I don't really know what I'm doing. I just kind of utilized a lot of tips and tricks that I picked up over the years from watching live 2D rigging streams and tutorials. But I did utilize a few things that ended up helping me out a lot. First was physics-based movement. This model's movement is based off of physics rather than strictly following the input head angles. It makes the model's movement look a lot more natural and less stiff by giving it a slight physics shake whenever I move from side to side. Next was that I learned how to utilize blend shapes. The main thing that I wanted to do with this model was make the mouth movements extremely detailed. Blend shapes were key for this, and while they're a little complicated to figure out, they're absolutely worth learning, especially for mouth shapes. Figuring out how to rig each individual mouth form and make it look correct and match my lip movements has been a huge struggle for me over the past 3 years, and I was so glad that blend shapes just made it so easy. From how I've heard it described, blend shapes basically get rid of the need to synthesize corners or to make every single mouth keyform, since they'll stack on top of each other and sort of merge together to adjust the mouth shapes for you. I made my mouth's model using guides for VBridger, so that added another layer of complexity to the mouth, and it basically made me fall into sort of a hyperfixation fugue state to figure out, and I didn't retain any of the information after I was done. And then, after 1 full week of non-stop VTuber rigging, I was finally done. So, it's time for the big reveal. I am so incredibly happy with how this model turned out. Making VTuber models for myself is something that I just really enjoy doing. And I really love watching the model come to life. I hope you did too. I'm very glad that with this model, I don't have to strictly control where I look and how I move my head. It's kind of freeing. When you put this model next to the old one, you can really see the difference in just how expressive and vibrant this model is. There's way more movement, and everything looks a lot more seamless in the animation and the execution. It's pretty obvious that I learned a lot more about how to make the model look true to life, with movements that better match me in real life, rather than artificially trying to exaggerate movement and having it look a little bit uncanny. And not in a fun way. Live 2D as a technology and an art form keeps on growing. I know I definitely couldn't have made the mouth movements look this accurate before I learned how to utilize blend shapes, and then physics movement for the movement, and a variety of other techniques to their full potential. And I want to keep learning and improving so that my next model is even better. And just for fun, here's a lineup of all of my VTuber models to date. Which one is your favorite? If you don't answer the most recent one, I will cry. So answer very carefully, okay? Thanks for watching, and remember, subscribe!